Most liars don't get caught because they say the wrong thing. They get caught because they say the right thing too many times. And there's one word that appears surprisingly often when people are hiding the truth. It's a word you've heard thousands of times. A word that sounds honest. A word that sounds trustworthy. A word that most people never question. But once you start noticing it, conversations begin to look very different. And today, you'll learn exactly what that word is, and why it appears so often when people aren't being completely truthful. We'll look at 5 situations where this word appears, why liars rely on it, and the subtle difference between someone who is trying to tell the truth, and someone who is trying to sound truthful. Let's begin. They want you to believe them before you think. The word is, honestly. At first glance, it sounds harmless. Most of us use it occasionally. But here's something interesting. When people are telling the truth, they usually focus on the information itself. When people are lying, they often focus on your reaction. That's a completely different goal. Think about it. If someone says, the meeting started at 9. That's information. But if someone says, honestly, the meeting started at 9. Something subtle has changed. The focus is no longer entirely on the fact. The focus has shifted toward convincing you. Toward gaining trust. Toward making sure you accept the statement. Now that doesn't automatically mean they're lying. Not at all. Many honest people use the word too. But deception researchers have noticed an interesting pattern. Liars often feel a stronger need to manage how they are perceived. They worry about being doubted. They worry about being questioned. They worry about appearing suspicious. And because of that anxiety, they frequently add verbal reassurance. Words designed to make their story sound stronger than it actually is. Honestly. Trust me. Believe me. To be completely honest. The statement isn't being supported by evidence. It's being supported by emphasis. And emphasis is much easier than proof. That's the first thing to listen for. Not the word itself. The reason the word appears. Because sometimes people aren't trying to communicate facts. They're trying to manufacture trust. And that's where things start getting interesting. But the real giveaway appears when pressure enters the conversation. Pressure makes the word appear more often. Here's where the pattern becomes easier to spot. Imagine someone is relaxed. Nobody is questioning them. Nobody is challenging their story. In that situation, most people speak normally. They simply describe what happened. But the moment pressure appears, language starts to change. The moment someone feels cornered, accused, or doubted, they often begin adding extra layers of reassurance. Honestly. Honestly, that's exactly what happened. Honestly, I would never do that. Honestly, you've got the wrong idea. Notice what is happening. The facts themselves haven't become stronger. The evidence hasn't improved. Only the reassurance has increased. And that's important. Because pressure doesn't just reveal character. It reveals communication habits. People who feel secure usually answer questions directly. People who feel threatened often focus on sounding believable. And sounding believable is very different from being truthful. The more uncomfortable someone becomes, the more likely they are to lean on emotional language. Not always. But often enough that it becomes worth noticing. That's why experienced investigators rarely focus on a single sentence. Instead, they watch for patterns. What changes when pressure increases? Does the story stay consistent? Do the details remain clear? Or does the person suddenly start repeating words designed to create trust? Because sometimes the biggest clue isn't what people say. It's what they suddenly start saying more often. Quick question. Comment 1 if you've been manipulated before. Comment 2 if you realize the truth too late. Be honest, most people have been both. Honest people sell facts. Liars sell credibility. One of the biggest differences between truth and deception is where the attention goes. Honest people usually focus on facts. Liars often focus on credibility. That may sound similar, but they're completely different things. Facts answer the question, what happened? Credibility answers the question, why should you believe me? A truthful person usually spends more time describing events. A deceptive person often spends more time managing perception. That's why you sometimes hear sentences that seem strangely focused on trust. Honestly, I'm a good person. Honestly, I'd never do something like that. Honestly, you know me. The conversation slowly shifts away from evidence and moves toward reputation, toward emotion, toward trust. Now again, this doesn't prove deception. No single word can do that. But when someone repeatedly asks you to trust them instead of showing you why they should be trusted, that's worth paying attention to. Because truth is usually comfortable with inspection. Deception prefers acceptance. Truth survives questions. Deception often tries to avoid them. And that difference quietly changes the language people choose. But here's the strange part. The reason this word works has less to do with the speaker, and more to do with you. Your brain wants to believe it. Human beings are built to look for shortcuts. Every day, your brain processes thousands of signals. And because of that, it often relies on quick judgments. Words like honestly create one of those shortcuts. The word sounds sincere. It sounds transparent. It sounds trustworthy. And because it sounds trustworthy, many people unconsciously lower their defenses. The brain thinks, this person seems genuine. This person sounds open. This person sounds like they're telling the truth. But language is not evidence. A confident statement can be false. A nervous statement can be true. Someone can sound honest and still be lying. Someone can sound uncertain and still be completely truthful. That's why intelligent listeners separate confidence from credibility. They don't automatically trust people because they sound convincing. They pay attention to consistency, to details, to behavior, to patterns over time. Because words can be chosen. But patterns are much harder to fake. And once you start noticing those patterns, conversations become much easier to understand. But before you start accusing everyone who says honestly of lying, there's one important thing you need to know. The biggest mistake people make. The biggest mistake is assuming the word itself is the problem. It isn't. Plenty of honest people use it. Plenty of truthful people say it every day. The word isn't the warning sign. The pattern is. Frequency matters. Context matters. Behavior matters. If someone says honestly once, that means almost nothing. If they say it repeatedly. If they use it every time they're challenged. If reassurance keeps increasing while evidence stays weak. That's when your attention should increase. Because communication isn't about one clue. It's about multiple clues pointing in the same direction. Think of it like a puzzle. One piece doesn't reveal the picture. But enough pieces together eventually do. And that's how deception works. Rarely through one dramatic mistake. Usually through many small signals that slowly add up. The word honestly is simply one of those signals. Not proof. Not certainty. Just a clue. And sometimes a very useful one. So remember. Liars often feel a stronger need to sound believable. Pressure tends to increase that need. Honest people usually focus on facts. Deceptive people often focus on credibility. Your brain naturally responds to words that sound sincere. And the real warning sign isn't the word itself. It's the pattern behind it. The most revealing part of communication isn't always what people say. It's what they feel compelled to emphasize. Because truth rarely needs decoration. Truth usually stands on its own. But when someone desperately wants to be believed, their language often reveals that desire. And sometimes, one simple word tells you far more than the sentence around it. Have you noticed someone overusing the word honestly? Or is there another word that immediately gets your attention? Leave it in the comments. And subscribe for more insights into human behavior and psychology.